Hello everyone. As Crystal said, my name is Susan and I'm with the Singapore Tourism Board. I'm based in New York City. And I just want to begin by saying thank you very much to all of you for taking time out of your busy day to join this Singapore webinar. And of course, a big thank you to CLIA as well for providing Singapore this opportunity. And the Singapore Tourism Board, we are a proud member, a proud CLIA Diamond member, and we very much value our membership with this wonderful association. So thank you again for the opportunity. So during today's very short webinar, what I'm going to do is I'm going to present first about Singapore as a tourism destination. I'm going to introduce you to all of the must-see sites. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about why cruising in Southeast Asia is so attractive. As you probably already know, Singapore is, of course, the #1 cruise hub for this beautiful and exotic part of the world. And cruising is really a wonderful way to explore the region, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why. I think a map is always a good place to start, just to remind you where Singapore is located. Singapore is, of course, an island country. It's located just off the southern tip of the Malay Peninsula. So it's located right between Malaysia, as you can see on the slide here in the blue, and Indonesia, marked in green. So Singapore is very easy to combine with these two neighboring countries, of course, as well as countries like Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Myanmar, and the Philippines. So I wanted to start by giving you some top reasons why Singapore is a perfect stop in Asia. First and foremost, Singapore is the #1 cruise hub of the region, and many major cruise lines that you're already familiar with and are probably already selling as well, like Royal Caribbean, Princess, Seabourn, Crystal, Cunard, Celebrity, and Holland America. All of them are either doing seasonal turnarounds or home porting in Singapore. Second reason why Singapore is a great stop in Asia is it's a perfect place to really become acclimated to a very exotic part of the world, particularly for first-timers in Asia, because Singapore is really a great combination of both East and West. Singapore is very green, very clean, one of the cleanest countries in the world. It's safe, very easy to navigate, and all of the locals are educated in British English. It was, of course, Singapore was originally founded as a British trading post. So English is a national language, which makes it very easy for Americans to communicate there. Third, visiting Singapore, I always like to say, is like taking a little mini tour through Asia. The country is made up of pioneers from all over Asia, and as a result, we have several ethnic neighborhoods like Little India, Chinatown, and Kampong Glam, which is the Malay neighborhood. So Singapore's wonderful ethnic diversity is actually one of its main attractions. And then lastly, arriving in or departing from Singapore is definitely a pleasure, and we have one of the best airports in the world, Changi Airport, and our national carrier, Singapore Airlines, is one of the best in the world as well. So further to my first point, I wanted to actually show you the cruise companies that are doing seasonal turnarounds and home porting in Singapore, and just to take a quick look at this list. And as you can see, Royal Caribbean Cruises, they have 3 ships in Singapore, the Mariner of the Seas, the Voyager of the Seas, and Ovation of the Seas. Celebrity Cruises has a couple of ships in Singapore, the Millennium and the Constellation. Holland America has one, Seabourn has one, Silver Sea Cruises, Azamara. Princess Cruises has both the Sapphire Princess and the Diamond Princess. So you can just get an overview here to see that there are a number of cruise line options when it comes to cruising to or from Singapore. So basically what I want to do is just give you a quick visual tour of the destination, and I want to start right in the heart of the city center, and that's called Marina Bay, which is my personal favorite part of the city. As you can see here, this area is architecturally stunning, and one of my favorite things to do in Singapore is to take a bumboat cruise. It's a historic vessel that cruises the waters here in Marina Bay and also goes along the Singapore River as well. Particularly, this is a magical experience at night because, as you can see here, all of these buildings are lit up, and yeah, just really stunning, particularly at night. The face of Marina Bay has changed quite a bit over the last several years due to some new attractions that have been built, such as this one here, the beautiful Marina Bay Sands, which has dramatically changed the Singapore skyline. It comprises 3 sloping hotel towers, and up at the top there, it's called the Sky Park. It looks a lot like a cruise ship a lot of times, people tell me. And once you go to the top there, you have this fantastic 360-degree view of the city skyline. There's a lush garden up there, an observation deck, and the very famous infinity pool. You guys have probably seen pictures of it before. So the pool is only for hotel guests, but you can still see the pool when you go up there to dine at one of the swanky, stylish rooftop bars called C'est La Vie. There's also another restaurant up top the Sky Park called Sky on 57, and that restaurant has a Singaporean celebrity chef, Justin Kwek, and is a great place to enjoy a meal. But like I said before, for those who don't want to eat or drink, they just want to enjoy the view, there is also an observation deck up on the Sky Park as well. So right next to Marina Bay Sands is the wonderful Gardens by the Bay. It opened about 5 years ago. It's my personal favorite attraction in all of Singapore. And Gardens by the Bay is actually quite large, and there are several different sections. But the ones I want to mention to all of you today are the ones you see pictured here. You have the super trees in the back, which I'll explain a little bit about in a moment, and also 2 conservatory domes in the front of the picture here, which are called the Flower Dome and the Cloud Forest. So let's start first with the super trees. This here is called the Super Tree Grove, and walking through here at night is absolutely magical. The super trees are tree-like structures. Of course, they're man-made, but they have real plant life growing inside. And because it's kind of hard to tell in this picture to have perspective, to give you an idea of how big they are, they range anywhere. The shortest one is 80 feet. And the tallest one in the middle there, that's 160 feet high. So they're these massive structures. And what they are is they're basically vertical gardens that are working as environmental engines that are supplying the entire water source for the garden. They also have solar panels that are powering the gardens. There's also, as you can see here, an elevated walkway between the 2 larger super trees where visitors can go up there and enjoy a panoramic aerial view of the gardens. So pictured here is the cool conservatory called the Cloud Forest, which is basically this mysterious world, high up in the mountains that's veiled in mist. That's kind of the scenery that they're recreating here. And the mist throughout the Cloud Forest is actually created by a waterfall that the Guinness Book of World Records has ranked as the tallest indoor waterfall in the world. It's 115 feet high. And then all throughout the Cloud Forest, you can go on these elevated walking paths, which is a really fun way to explore the dome. So this is the taller of the 2 domes. The other one looks like this. This is called the Flower Dome. And it is the largest glass greenhouse in the world, and it's where you can find very unique tropical plants and flowers in bloom. It's kind of like year-round springtime inside the Flower Dome. So that's an overview of Gardens by the Bay. This is a very futuristic gardens in Singapore. And now I want to take a look at another garden-themed attraction in Singapore, which is the oldest one. It's the Singapore Botanic Gardens. And as you might know, Singapore's nickname is the city in a garden because all of the greenery found throughout the island country, it's just prevalent. Everywhere you go, you see green. At the end of the day, Singapore is a tropical island, and that's very apparent as you're traveling around the island. So the Singapore Botanic Gardens, it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's a great place to just unwind and soak up nature. And then within the Singapore Botanic Gardens, there is the lovely National Orchid Garden, which is the national flower, the orchid of Singapore. And inside the National Orchid Garden, you'll find the world's largest orchid display, and there's just this wonderful array of many different orchid hybrids. It's just, if you love orchids, if your clients love orchids, they're going to be in heaven here. So also I wanted to mention that, one of Singapore's biggest attractions is its ethnic diversity. And Singapore is home to about 5.5 million people. And I wanted to show you this slide to give you an idea of the different ethnicities you'll find in Singapore. So the large majority at 75% are ethnic Chinese, 13% are ethnic Malay, 9% ethnic Indian, and 3% Eurasians and Asians of different origins. So this diverse cultural makeup is reflected in the neighborhoods in Singapore that were settled by the early migrants. So we have 3 distinct neighborhoods. We have Chinatown, Kampong Glam, the Malay district, and Little India. And so today these enclaves, they've almost become what I call like living museums, where visitors can go and watch locals go about their daily lives of, eating, shopping, worshiping, and basically just enjoying life. So Chinatown is a great place to sample traditional dishes, to experience traditional wellness, Chinese wellness like a reflexology massage, one of my favorite, and also to visit exquisite temples like are pictured here. This is called the Buddha Tooth Relic Temple. Kampong Glam, as I mentioned before, is the Malay Enclave in Singapore, and it's home to a very colorful street that's pictured here. This is called Haji Lane, which is a row of stores, very quirky boutiques, hip bars and cafes. And the street running right parallel to Haji Lane is called Arab Street, also a great place to shop. You find things like Persian carpets, kabaya dresses, and handmade perfumes on Arab Street. So Haji Lane and Arab Street make it a very fun shopping district in Singapore. And then also in this neighborhood is the Sultan Mosque, which is the focal point for Singapore's Muslim community. And then the third cultural neighborhood in Singapore is Little India, one of Singapore's most vibrant districts, and it's a great place to eat authentic Indian food, of course to shop and to also visit Hindu temples. So moving on now to food, Singapore's diversity is also very evident in its amazing traditional food with all these vibrant flavors, from China, from Malaysia, from Indonesia. Singapore is definitely the food capital of Southeast Asia here, and you can see all the different dishes that are part of the Singaporean cuisine. By far the most famous is the chili crab, which is pictured in the center on the top. Other famous dishes include the Hainanese chicken rice, laksa, the roti prata, Indian bread, nasi lemak, kaya toast. So, eating in Singapore is definitely one of the highlights in the destination. As you might already know, Singapore is very famous for its hawker centers, which are open-air food centers that serve this wide variety of fresh traditional foods and desserts that are found at individual food stalls. And here at the Singaporean Hawker Center, basically you can find a master chef at each stall who has pretty much spent their entire working life mastering one particular dish, such as the chicken satay that you can see pictured here on the slide. Singapore, in its hawker centers, they have a very important historical and cultural significance in the country. As you might know, Singapore started out as a migrant country, and so basically these hardworking locals, at the end of a long day, they were too tired and too busy to cook. So therefore, they would dine at these affordable hawker centers. It was, and it still is, very much a way of life for people and for families in Singapore. And just to give you an idea of how affordable they are, you can get a good quality 3-course meal for approximately $10 US. And today hawker centers are really celebrated as a very authentic cultural experience in Singapore. And when Anthony Bourdain went to Singapore to film a couple of his different shows, he was so inspired by the Singapore hawker center concept that he actually announced plans to launch what's called the Bourdain Market in the heart of New York City. And what it is it's an international food market that's actually modeled after the Singaporean hawker centers. Maybe you've heard this news. It just came out this past summer. Michelin just released its first Singapore guide this past summer, and 29 of our restaurants received prestigious star rankings. And Singapore is Michelin Guide's only Southeast Asia publication, which is really a testament to the fact that the country is the food capital of this region of the world. So there are a total of 200 eateries in the guide that span more than 35 cuisine categories. There, of course, was one restaurant that you can see here on the slide that received 3 Michelin stars. It's run by the famous chef Joël Robuchon. But what's truly remarkable and what I really want to highlight is that 2 of our food stalls actually earned a Michelin star. And this is the first in the guide's history that they gave a Michelin star, not to a restaurant, but to an actual food stall. So this now makes Singapore home to the least expensive Michelin-starred meal in the entire world. We're very excited about this. And so, for example, this bowl of pork noodles that you see on this slide here that has a Michelin star, this bowl of noodles only costs $3 US. So it's really remarkable that you can eat a Michelin star rated meal for such little money. So now I want to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk not only about Singapore, but really about Southeast Asia and what makes it unique to cruise in this part of the world. And if you've been to Southeast Asia, and hopefully many of you that are listening have been to this region, then you know that it's a very exotic, magical part of the world to explore. And I think that it's really this blend of old and new that makes Southeast Asia so dynamic. So whether it's the storybook temples of Thailand, or booming cities like Singapore and Kuala Lumpur, no matter where you go, you're going to find people in this part of the world that are courteous, that are welcoming, They're deeply proud of their rich culture, of their craftsmanship, of the magical architecture you find here, and really a captivating cuisine in all of the countries in this region. So I think it's really all of these different highlights combined that offer cruisers a truly unforgettable experience in Southeast Asia. And just for a quick overview of the region of Southeast Asia, if you start with a world map and you kind of zone in with the red square on where Southeast Asia is located, and if you zoom in, you first start with Singapore as the cruise hub of Southeast Asia. And the easiest and nearest countries to cruise to from Singapore are, of course, neighboring Malaysia and Indonesia, as I mentioned before, the two countries surrounding Singapore. A little further out, you find Brunei, Thailand, Myanmar, Cambodia, the Philippines, Vietnam, and also Laos, landlocked Laos, which can be visited from Vietnam. So these are the 10 countries in Southeast Asia, and within as you can see here on the slide, within a 3 to 5 day itinerary, the majority of these countries can be visited via a cruise from Singapore. And for cruises that are a bit longer, you can go beyond what this map shows and reach the Philippines and Myanmar, for example. So, furthermore, of course, many cruise companies have longer cruises that either start or end in Singapore and include North Asia, for example. So, for example, starting a cruise in Singapore and then cruising up to Hong Kong or Japan. There's also other cruise itineraries that go in the other direction, from Singapore to India or from Singapore to Australia. So basically, there is a cruise itinerary to or from Singapore that'll suit your client's specific travel preferences regardless of what they might be. So as for some unique selling points for Southeast Asia as a cruise region, this slide will kind of walk you through them. It has, Southeast Asia has a very tropical climate located very near the equator. This allows for year-round cruising. The region's geography is also very well suited to cruising. There are 25,000 islands, and for the sake of comparison, the Caribbean only has 7,000. Southeast Asia has 80,000 miles of coastline, so there's a lot to see from the ship while cruising in the region. And Southeast Asia really just has this amazing, diverse offerings. We have UNESCO World Heritage Sites, pristine beaches, as well as modern cosmopolitan cities. The common misperception of Southeast Asia is that temples are the only attraction that the region has to offer, but that's simply not true. Southeast Asia offers very diverse experiences, such as modern cosmopolitan cities like Singapore, like Bangkok, Thailand, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, as well as Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. And in contrast to the modern cities, Southeast Asia also has very pristine beaches and untouched nature, like you find in Cebu in the Philippines, and Phuket and Koh Samui in Thailand. In Malaysia, places like Langkawi and Kota Kinabalu, and also Bali in Indonesia. Southeast Asia also has numerous heritage and cultural sites like Malacca and Penang in Malaysia, Borobudur in Indonesia, Bangkok, Thailand, Angkor Wat in Cambodia, and Hue in Vietnam. So just this wide range of offerings all within one region in the world. And then on a final note about cruising, cruising from Singapore is so easy. We have two fantastic cruise terminals. We have the Singapore Cruise Center as well as the Marina Bay Cruise Center, both of which offer the region's first fly cruise and cruise fly service, which is a very seamless experience of baggage check at Changi Airport prior to cruise departure and vice versa, which really just allows for a lot of flexibility and convenience. However, despite how convenient this cruise fly service is, I definitely highly recommend having your clients stay a minimum of 3 nights in Singapore, either pre or post cruise, to just get a sampling of all that the country has to offer visitors. So, I've only had a chance to scratch the surface of all there is to see and do in Singapore and, of course, in Southeast Asia as well. So I wanted to recommend visiting our website, the Singapore Tourism Board official website, which is yoursingapore.com, and it's really a great resource of information about Singapore for both travel agents as well as consumers alike. Another very useful resource that I want to leave you with is the Singapore Tourism Board Content Hub. So it's STB for Singapore Tourism Board, contenthub.com, which has a library of images that you can use after you register as a trade partner. And I just want to leave you my contact information here. Feel free to reach out to me at any time that I can be of assistance in helping you sell Singapore. And I hope that you have learned something new about the destination, and just want to thank you again for your time. And I think that we now have time for a short Q&A session to wrap things up. So I'll turn the floor back over to Crystal, who will begin the Q&A session for us. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Susan. We do have a few questions here for you that our attendees have added to the question box. If you do have a question and you have not added it to the question box, in the right-hand side of your screen, there should be a box for your GoToWebinar that says questions, and you can just type a quick question there for Susan if you have one. One question is there a visa required to enter Singapore?
There is not a visa required to enter Singapore for American travelers, no, for stays that are less than 30 days. The only thing that a visitor needs is a passport that's valid for 6 months post the day you leave Singapore. So as long as it's valid, as long as they have a passport that's valid and has pages to be stamped, passport validity for 6 months, they're good to go. No visa required.
Okay. And what currency do you use?
Oh, yeah, sure. It's the Singapore dollar. So in the Singapore dollar is about $1 US, just for the sake of comparison. So $1 US will buy you 1 Singapore dollar and 30 cents.
Okay. How far is the cruise terminal from the airport?
Very close. I mean, nothing in Singapore is very far. It's a small island, so you can get, there are 2 cruise terminals, but you can reach either cruise terminal, and I would say about 20, 25 minutes from the airport, so very close.
Okay. Where can you get the information on the Fly Cruise or the Cruise Fly service?
On Changi Airport's website. And I'll follow up with the person who asked that question when I get the webinar report, and I'll send them the link.
Perfect. What is the best time of year to visit Singapore, and what would the weather be like?
Sure. Well, it's an easy question to answer because it's warm year-round. We have no seasons in Singapore. We're right next to the equator, so no matter what time of year somebody visits, it's going to be the same weather. So tropical, high humidity, and very warm. Towards the end of the year, it's a little bit rainier than normal. So I would say like November, December, maybe even into January, but it's not like, you know, it pours every day during that time frame. It just tends to be a little wetter towards the end of the year and the very beginning of the year. But, you know, because it's a tropical island, what I've found, no matter when I go to Singapore, you know, you'll have, like on any tropical island, you have a downpour for, you know, 30 minutes, an hour maybe, and then it clears up and you're able to go about your normal plan. So yeah, but basically warm and tropical year-round.
Okay. Is Singapore a handicap-friendly city? Is there easy access for wheelchairs and other disabled visitors?
Yeah, so Singapore is the infrastructure is amazing. Definitely, it's one of the, if not the most developed countries in the entire region. So yeah, when you're talking about Southeast Asia, definitely Singapore with its infrastructure is going to be very, very easy to get around.
Okay. Is there a fee to go to Marina Bay Sands?
Okay, to go to Marina Bay Sands, I mean, it's a huge complex. You have a hotel, you have a casino, you have shopping, you have restaurants, you have, yeah, hawker centers even within. You have a museum. There's this lotus-looking piece of architecture, you know, museum. So to walk around Marina Bay Sands, of course, there's no fee. You can even go into the hotel. You know, it's fine. The only thing that you'll encounter a fee on is if you go up to the observation deck. There is a fee to go up there. What I always recommend people do, instead of go up to the observation deck, to rather go up to the bar, C'est la vie, or to the restaurant up there, and actually rather than pay the admission for the observation deck, personally, I would rather go up to say la vie and spend the money on a drink and still enjoy the exact same view, but rather have a drink up there and relax a little bit rather than go up to pay just to walk around the observation deck. So yeah, I mean, of course, if you go into the museum, it's called the Art Science Museum. That lotus-looking piece of architecture that you oftentimes see in pictures of Marina Bay Sands, to go inside there, there's a fee. But otherwise, just to walk around Marina Bay Sands, you can even walk out on the pavilion right in front of the hotel towers and enjoy the view of the bay itself. There's no fee to do that.
Okay. Are there fam trips offered for travel agents to Singapore, and if so, how regularly?
So yeah, we have a small office here in New York. There's only about eight, nine of us, and so what we've done so far within the last year and a half or so, we've done fam trips. We've done it through the consortia that Singapore Tourism Board is a member of, and that's strictly only because of manpower issues and constraints. So what we've done so far is we've done a Virtuoso fam trip that Virtuoso helped us coordinate. We have a signature fam trip that's actually going next week as well. So we've mainly worked within the Virtuoso and signature consortia, relying a little bit on their help to get the agents together. So we've done those two. So those are really the only organized trips that we have. Oftentimes we have our hotel partners, like the Shangri-La or the Fullerton hotels in Singapore, that put together a group of travel agents that book with them, and we help organize the land program for those travel agent groups. So here and there, but it's not something we do on a mass scale just because we're a small office. And yeah, of course, putting together those trips is a lot of work, so it's more of a time issue. But yes, a little bit here and there.
Okay. One last question. Before you attend your trip to Singapore, how can you receive some brochures and a map of the city?
Sure. My email, I think, is still on the screen. You can send me an email. You can give me a call. And I'm happy to do that. So I'm happy to do that for you as travel agents, and I'm also happy to do that for your clients as well. We don't have a huge stock. I mean, we're an office in Manhattan, and we don't have a big storage room or anything like that, so we don't have, hundreds and hundreds of brochures. But if it's, smaller requests for clients that you have going over, or even a group, we can always, if you need more brochures, we're happy to send them to you. It just might take a little longer to get them shipped from Singapore. But yeah, I would be the person that you reach out to send maps and different brochures for you or for your clients.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Susan. I know that our attendees really enjoyed this webinar. It was very informative.
Great. Thank you.
All right. I know that there were a few additional questions that were a little bit more specific. I will be providing Susan with the attendee list as well as the questions that were more specific so that she can reach out to you personally. Again, thank you so much for attending this CLIA webinar with our EP partner, Singapore Tourism Board. Thank you so much, Susan, for presenting to our members. Everyone have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.